Today on The Anxious Achiever, the story of an anxious entrepreneur who was told by his psychologist when he was a young man that he needed to find a career that he could handle, one suited to his supposedly fragile temperament. Well, this anxious entrepreneur went on to found an incredible business that sold for $92 million. I'm Morra Aarons-Mele, and this is The Anxious Achiever, the show that looks at the intersection of mental health and leadership and work and asks, how can we do it all better? Josh Kilmer-Purcell is a self-described anxious entrepreneur, but his anxiety hasn't held him back. Instead, it's led him to have an approach to risk that built a 10-figure beauty and wellness brand. Josh and his husband, Dr. Brent Ridge, co-founded Beekman 1802, which grew from a goat farm in upstate New York to filling shelves at all the big beauty stores. Along the way, they won the amazing race and they built a business around kindness. Josh tells me, I had no role models growing up in the corporate world, no mentors who would talk about mental illness. Josh has lived his whole life with clinical depression and anxiety. And over time, he's come to appreciate the upsides of the pain behind having depression and anxiety. He says, I really did start to see anxiety as my superpower and my depression as a way to help me empathize with consumers. My conversation with Josh Kilmer-Purcell. Josh Kilmer-Purcell, welcome to The Anxious Achiever. I'm just thrilled you're here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I mean, what you're doing is so important and so close to my heart. So I am just thrilled to be a part of it.
Well, I have to tell you that we're both Harvard Business Review authors. And when Felicia, who is the head of PR at the press at Harvard Business Review, sent me your book, and she tagged the page where you say, anxiety is my superpower. And she's like, oh my God, you have to interview Josh. But I have to tell you that I watched your TV show when I was nursing my second son.
Oh my gosh.
In the winter. So it's like I'm in a Boston winter, just hunkered down, and it's probably 3 a.m. and I'm watching your show and I loved it. I friggin' loved it. It was just like my dream.
That is I think that's what our show was. It was like this little cult comfort food TV show for a certain amount of people. And I still, in my head, I can hear the music from the show and it calms me down. So
I know. That's how I felt. Because, I was, that period of early motherhood can be, it's a tough period,
I bet, yeah.
And you both are so charming.
Oh,
and
thanks.
so I'm excited. And then I was in LaGuardia a few days ago.
Oh,
and I was
store.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
There's this giant store in LaGuardia.
Yes, we've grown quite a bit since the TV show.
Well, you sure have. I actually looked up. So the last reported is you said you had about $150 million in retail sales. I don't know.
Correct.
This was probably a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in 2021, you sold a majority stake for $92 million.
Yes, that was a very happy day. But a very good day for us and the whole Beekman team, the whole Beekman neighborhood, as we call it.
I mean, that is a chunk of change. And you founded the company in 2009?
Yes. Yep. So for those who aren't familiar, and it's most likely most of you, we started, Brent was a physician and I was in advertising and I was also a writer, and we lived in New York City. And in 2006, we were driving in upstate New York on a weekend getaway, apple picking trip, this time of year, actually. And we found this little town called Sharon Springs. We loved it. We found this farm on the outskirts of town that was for sale. We bought it. It was just going to be a weekend place. We were career corporate go-getters.
Made a good amount of money, I assume, like had really good jobs.
Super professional. I was executive creative director at top ad firm. Brent, at that time, he had left medicine because Martha Stewart recruited him to start the health and wellness division of. So we were like on corporate roll. Bought this farm as a weekend getaway. And then right after we did, we got a letter in our mailbox from a neighbor, and his name was Farmer John. And he was losing his farm, and he had 80 goats, and he had nowhere to bring them. And he wrote us a letter and said, you have an empty barn, you have a little cottage on your property. I will take care of the property if I can bring my goats. Otherwise, I have to sell them, and it would break my heart. And so it was a perfect, symbiotic relationship for us. And then 2008, just 2 years later, we both lost our jobs suddenly in the Great Recession. And within 30 days of each other, we went from amazing careers, big paychecks, to nothing. Wow. And we literally Googled, what can we make with goat milk? And we started making, and the first thing came up was soap. So we started making goat milk soap with our neighbors around our dining room table. And that's, people who saw the TV show, that's actually when we had the opportunity, because there was a small article written about us in the New York Times about starting over during a recession. What do you do when you're a career person and you lose your job? That attracted the attention of a small cable network. And they did this reality show of us starting our company and learning to be farmers. So that's how it all began. And now we're 18 years later, or however long, and it's been a trip.
I have so many questions I want to ask you. I want to do the show. So the main thing I want to talk about is it's rare that I get a nine-figure, is $92 million 9 figures?
Yes.
Whatever.
But I have a hard time with that too.
Lots of zeros. It's rare that I get a lots of zeros leader saying, I have a clinical anxiety disorder.
Right.
And the role that it played. So that's really what I want to talk about first. Then I really want to talk about risk. You write in the book how you think about risk, how you and Brent, who's your life partner and your business partner, think about risk differently. Because a lot of the people, I think, who listen to this show and who are part of the Anxious Achiever community, we have a sort of a relationship with risk. Well, we have different relationships with risk. Those of us who run very anxious have a certain relationship, but I have a lot of people who listen who have ADHD, who have bipolar, and have a very different relationship with risk. So I want to talk about risk, your relationship with risk, what you've learned along the way. And then I want to talk a little bit at the end about your genius with storytelling and branding and PR, because as a person who used to be in that industry, I mean, that was always to me your extreme genius, just genius.
Thank you.
So I think that'll get us through. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. And it is so close to my heart, exactly because of what you just said. I had no role models in the corporate world, no mentors that would talk about mental difference. And I, straight up front, I have lived my entire life with clinical depression and anxiety. Yeah. And, since I was a kid, and it was never, ever talked about. In fact, when I had my first acute anxiety phase was in college. I always, had episodes as a child, but when it was diagnosed in college, I was told that I would have to choose a profession that I could handle. And so I was immediately limited in my mind because of my mental differences.
Who told you that?
A psychologist. And I mean, and in all fairness to him, it was a emergency phase of my life. And so he was most likely trying to comfort me, but that just stuck with me for a long time. So I went into my career thinking I was going to have to limit myself because of my mental differences.
So then what happened?
Well, I just over time, which I think that is one of the benefits of having mental differences, is you accumulate experiences that then inform how you interact with the world. So over time, I really did start to see anxiety as my superpower and my depression as a way to help me empathize with consumers. That depression for me, I believe it makes me extremely empathic to other people's conditions. And so that helped me, I believe, be a better marketer. And so in advertising, that's depression. That's how I feel it served me well. But really, it was that reframing of saying, like, these two things that are supposedly supposed to limit me actually can fuel me. That's when the realization that made me sort of get over that, that limitation in my mind.
I want to talk a little bit about the depression. I think I've had a lot of guests who have said anxiety. I mean, to me, that is so resonant. It's the theory of my book, The Anxious Achiever. Very few people say nice things about depression because depression, well, it's the worst.
Yeah, that's what people, because that's how we're trained to believe in it, right? That's
and it feels terrible.
Yeah, it feels, yes. And I will say here's the thing that changed my life with depression. And this sounds really awful every time I say it. I realized probably about a decade ago that I will never be happy. That sounds awful, doesn't it? It sounds like the worst therapy you could ever have.
I mean, no offense, you're rich, you're successful, you have a successful relation. I mean, you've got everything.
Yes. Doesn't so many people with clinical depression do have all those things or anything more. But I realized I will never be happy. And that freed me more than any pill or any therapy that I ever was in. Just freeing myself from chasing something that was not going to be. Now, I've since refined that. That was like that moment of clarity for me that freed me. But I've refined that into realizing I will never be happy like other people are happy. Mm-hmm. So I have contentment. I have feelings of content perspective that are good. But knowing that I'm never going to be happy like other people are going to be happy made me not expect miracles from pills, even though I still take them, not feel that there's something I'm missing in life I need to have. It's just that realization freed me.
Oh God, I love that. And if I can just add one thing for the listeners, it's, happiness is a complicated thing because happiness is actually an evaluative judgment.
Yes.
It's, and your thing about compared to other people, I think is really important here. It's like, happy compared to who? Happy compared to what I was raised to expect. Like, what is happy versus joy, which is an involuntary emotion.
Yes.
Like fear or stress.
Yes. And which comes over everybody.
Even in your worst moments, you might actually feel joy.
If you can identify it. Yeah.
That's right. And so I think that really resonates.
Yeah. And what I've learned about depression personally is that diversion is the best medicine. Again, I've been in therapy over the years. I still take pills, like all that, but diversion is the best therapy for me. So that idea of being an entrepreneur, getting out of bed, putting more things on my plate instead of less things on my plate actually helps me work through, has helped me work through depression in my life, just because it diverts my attention away from it.
Talk about empathy, because I think a lot of people say, well, when you're depressed, and sometimes when you're very anxious, you're so wrapped up in yourself. Mm-hmm. How can you have empathy?
I think it's the opposite. I think when you're happy, conventionally happy, you are extremely self-centered, and you have no needs to fulfill, or you have less needs to fulfill. Mm-hmm. So you're less aware of the people around you. And I believe when you are depressed, you are searching for help and answers from other people, which to me helps you become more empathic about who other people are, what they need, what they do, what they can offer. So that just makes you more aware of other people than when you're content, happy, and fulfilled. You're your own little thing.
That's interesting. Sort of a more expansive. I mean, the word that I often use is seeking. We're always seeking.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, especially with, if you're living with depression, you're seeking relief. And like I said, diversion is that sort of that relief, just that relief from thinking about it all the time.
Distraction from it. Yeah.
Right. But people are often the best diversion. So your relationships with other people grow deeper to help you stay not focused on the depression itself. And as those connections grow deeper, you become a more empathic person. I don't know if there's ever been a study on it, but I bet if you talk to most people with clinical depression, they would self-identify themselves as more empathic.
That is in my experience. I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people with all kinds of mental health challenges and neurodivergence and brain differences and contrary to what people think about us.
Yes. Yes.
We're not just empathic, we're attuned. And I think as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, as a creative, we're super attuned.
Yes. And creativity is also an amazing diversion from a lot of life's challenges. And Brent, my partner, husband, and I, we often talk about how creativity and why so many people who are gay or LGBTQIA are in creative fields, but also people with mental differences are in creative fields.
And entrepreneurs,
because creativity is really nothing more than overcoming an obstacle. That's what creativity is. You've got a wall, you have to think of a way around it. And all of those things we talked about, whether you're a minority or have a mental difference or have a new business that nobody else has tried before, those are walls that you need to think of ways around. And when those kind of things that everyone thinks are disadvantages become advantages. I've been LGBT plus gay all my life. And as a child, oh my God, the hoops I jumped through to try to convince people I wasn't gay or present to the world, to code to the world that I wasn't gay. That made me super creative. So now I think that's why a lot of gay people are in creative fields, because you're just really good at it.
That really resonates. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
It's the same with mental illness and mental differences of any sort. As a child, you're finding ways to get through it, novel ways that other people never have to search for.
I think that's so true. I don't know if this resonates with you. I also have bipolar disorder, but like for me, I always felt like if the world was in neutral tones for everyone else, it was in like screaming colors for me all the time. Which was very energizing and yet also sometimes exhausting, but just different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have experience with that, but I can see how that being diagnosed with a bipolar issue is something, again, just like being depressed, you're being led to believe that you need to be happy in order not to be depressed. And the same, I'm sure with bipolar, people are like, well, you shouldn't be excited you shouldn't have highs or lows. I'm like, oh my God, everybody has highs or lows. You have to have highs or lows. The goal is not to get away from it. The goal is to manage it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I took some notes here, which I just want to read out, because when you started your business, from what I read in your book, you were running from an outcome that you didn't desire, which was bankruptcy and not being able to pay the bills and all of that, as much as you were, it wasn't like you both said, we want to start this business. You were like, oh shit, what are we going to do now? And it emerged. The stakes were high. And I'm curious, as an anxious person, how you did it, how your anxiety helped you maybe and hindered you. And, what's helpful for folks right now, we're in a terrible job market. People are getting laid off. They're losing their jobs. They're worried AI is going to take their jobs. It's very unsettled. And so tell us your story and what could be illustrative.
Yep. Well, two things. First, I think that a lot of anxious people believe they can't be entrepreneurs because the entrepreneurial world media that we consume says that we have to be Elon Musk's or Mark Zuckerberg's, or like we have to risk it all. We have to gamble it all, like take big swings, don't be afraid to lose, fail fast. And that's really part of the reason we wrote the book, was because I wanted people to know that there are a lot of successful entrepreneurs that are not like that are very practical people. And even like myself, a very risk averse person. You can still be an extremely successful entrepreneur by being risk averse. You don't have to be Steve Jobs,
That sounds like sacrilege. Like I've never heard that before.
Right. And I will also say that of the which leads me to my second answer, of the risk adverse founders, those bold sort of, maverick founders that I've met in this world, they always have a partner who grounds them. Always. There's always, I call them beta, and I mean nothing bad by that. I actually mean that's good. There are like alpha betas out there who manage all of the Elon Musks.
Well, he needs a lot. I feel like he has to have like
he needs a better one, I think. So you can be an entrepreneur, and that's part of my answer. I was very fortunate that I had my husband, Brent, who is a wild optimist. He is a risk taker. He's extremely confident in his own abilities, and it served him very well. Now, that led us into direct conflict, which you saw on our TV show for probably the first 5 to 10 years of our company, that we were always fighting because we had different perspectives on every challenge. I saw everything that could go wrong. He thought everything, he was a magical thinker. Everything would go right. So we fought until we learned to really respect each other's perspective, until I was right enough that I saw, when he saw that I saw, when there were enough I told you so's on both sides, we started to respect each other.
That sounds like marriage to me.
Exactly. And it can be that way in business too. If you can find someone, if you're in a career and you're anxious and that that makes you very strategic because you see all the problems coming down the pike, find that overly confident person in your organization and partner with them. You're going to have to help them respect you, because they're going to be just like Brent was, who thinks that all you do, you're just a worrywart. And
oh God.
Right. So you're going to have to find someone that respects you, and you're going to have to respect them, because on the other side, I've seen Brent pull off things that I never would have tried, because, they had a 90%, failure chance. So find that partner who is that complement, that magical thinker to your anxiety. And I think that's an entrepreneurial avenue that people don't realize exists, is that partnership.
You said that if you thought an idea was a good idea, it was like almost guarantees to succeed because you're such a worrywart. And
Yes.
on the contrary, if he thought an idea was a bad idea, it probably was a bad idea.
Exactly. Then you need no discussion. Yep.
You talk about having an unsexy approach to risk.
Yeah.
What's that?
Risk is measurable. Risk is a real thing. And when you actually sit down, and this again for people who live with anxiety, when you sit down and measure that risk, you don't just contemplate the risk, because when you contemplate risk and you're an anxious person, it amplifies and becomes impossible. So when you sit down and measure risk, then you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to take that risk. But if you just start compiling risks, they amplify into larger than they really are.
They go global.
Exactly.
So let's get nitty gritty. What was your process for getting realistic, measurable risk on the table, and then coming up with ways that maybe you could make decisions?
Well, Brent and I have the 51% rule. This helped us through our whole relationship, personal and professional, where whoever has the most passion about any decision gets to make that decision. It's not who has the skill set or has the most experience in something, which is how most people define or give advice for partners. They say, stay in your lane, do what you do best. And Brent and I have divided it by passion. So whoever is the most passionate about a decision has that extra 1%. The other person can't walk away. They still have to argue their 49%, because that is sharpening the results, sharpening the argument, sharpening the result. But the reason the person with the most passion has that extra 1% is because they are going to work harder. They're a little bit more afraid to fail. So they get that final decision, even if it's not what their skill set is. chances are that 1% of passion is going to lead to success.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I don't think that answered your question, but that's like, yeah, that is how it really does come down to passion, but then you can't walk away if you don't have the passion, you can't just wipe your hands and walk away.
But I think you sort of talk about how you were conservative in the business. And I'd love to hear do you have a spreadsheet that you use? Do you come up with KPIs or metrics that say, well, if X happened, then Y would happen? Like, how do you literally contain the anxiety in a realistic way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that you can make a decision. Like when you were first starting out, I'm sure you had to do things you were uncomfortable with.
Yes. Data.
Data.
The more data you have for anything, the more comfortable you can become with it. And I think that can be imposing for people with anxiety or depression, because the amount of information sometimes can feel overwhelming. But if you have that data, instead of thinking there's more ways for things to go wrong, if you have a lot of data, focus on how many things you've crossed off the list that can go wrong because you have compiled that data.
Interesting.
So it's really, we are very conservative. And part of that is because we have another saying, we say there's two ways to shoot for the moon. One is to build a rocket, one is to build a ladder. And we chose to build a ladder partially because of my anxiety, that I'm a more conservative person. If you shoot for the moon with a rocket, most of them don't get there. If you get there, good for you, you're Mark Zuckerberg. If you build a ladder to get to the moon, you're also probably not going to get to the moon. Like, it's just, ladders don't reach the moon, but you're going to end up higher off the ground than you started. And so for us, that was more of a comfort to know that if we do things slow and conservatively, we're probably going to be better off than we know we'll be better off than when we started. We may not, hit all the heights we could hit, but we're going to be better off. And for us, that felt more comfortable.
Interesting. Did you ever have a time, you may not have, but this is something I've experienced and I hear from a lot of my clients, where you were so anxious about getting bad news in the data that you avoided it? Like maybe avoiding looking at your bank account or avoiding looking at metrics. For me, it's like I avoid looking at my listener downloads because I'm like, oh, it's going to be bad. And then I'm going to be a failure. And I just avoid it.
Yes. Yes. At the same time, we know that's bad medicine, right?
We know it is.
Yeah, we know it is. And you give yourself grace to do it. Because you know that if you then look into that listener data, or you look into that there's a solution in there somewhere to whatever that bad news is. But I agree with you. And that's, I think, also part of the combination of anxiety and depression is you don't want to you're anxious. You want to know what those listener data are. You want to know what the sales numbers are, but you don't want to know because it could make you depressed.
Exactly.
So having the tools to deal with both, I think can help with both.
What were your tools, or what are your tools when you're feeling a little bit like, I don't want to do this, but I need to be brave, or I need to force myself? Like, what do you do?
Again, sort of distraction. Like if there's something I really don't want to do, or if I'm afraid of doing, I carve out on the other side of it something that I do want to do, or something that I know will calm me. So if I have a bad day coming, I schedule a good day after that, so that I can get through those things I really don't want to do. I don't like doing appearances. I am not a public person, yet I am the most public. We're on live TV on QVC and HSN hundreds of hours a year. We do appearances. I do not like that. So I schedule days after it that I look forward to, so that I know when I do these. And here's the tricky little thing. I think I hate doing it, and then I start doing it, and I'm like, oh gosh, all these people around me are making me feel better. I know. But
that is the lie of depression and anxiety. That is the lie. It's like, I have to stay in my little hole because I'll feel, and then you get out of it and you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. There's a Wallace Stevens poem, Let Be a finale of seem, which is basically fake it till you make it. But it is true. When I am at an appearance and I'm around people, I'm happy to be around people. But you just can't, getting yourself out there is the hard part.
Oh, it's really hard. I would say that for me and my husband, this has been like the struggle of our 20-year long marriage. He's very extroverted and he just loves to be out and about. And I'm not only am I introverted, I can get very depressed. And so he's like, well, why can't you physically go to dinner? Like, what's so hard about going to dinner? And I'm like, you don't understand. I can't possibly leave my bedroom. I just can't.
Yeah. You're like, I'll tell you everything that's wrong with could go wrong going to dinner.
Yes. Or just like I physically feel when I'm depressed, like I cannot open the door to my bedroom.
Yes.
And like being in a long relationship and trying to build that understanding it's been wonderful and hard.
Yeah. And it involves a respect on both sides.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, you introvert and extrovert, like that, that's a very popular topic right now. I would be willing to bet that you are an extremely great extrovert when you're out there in front of people. I
interviewed, or I was interviewed by Francis Fry, who's a famous professor at Harvard Business School. And we both agreed yesterday that we are extreme introverts. And the happiest place for us is in front of thousands of people on stage.
Right. I am like, exactly the same way.
Put me on TV, right? You are obviously.
Yeah. And people say, well, that's performative. It's like, yes, I am performing myself into happiness. Like, that's true.
Brian Little, a professor at Harvard, calls it acting out of character, which is interesting. And maybe it's not out of character. This is a piece of your character. But yes. It's like we put on sort of the shiny version of ourselves.
Yes. And I love that description because when like I said, we're on HSN and QVC a lot. And I'm very aware that I am performing on there. I mean, I'm performing authentically. Like I am who I am. So part of me performing as a, happy person is true. So, but I'm very aware that a large portion of that audience watching television shopping are remote, are, at home for different reasons, physical, often mental. They can be very lonely. And I'm aware of what I'm performing to these people. So I always make it a point at some point on my time in TV to mention that I live with anxiety and depression, because I want people to know that I don't want them always to see a happy clappy world and think that it's happy clappy, but I also want them to know that you cannot be happy clappy and sometimes be happy clappy. And so there's acting in character, but I always want to break character to let people know that I don't want to say it's a character, but it's it's real. It's still authentic.
Oh God, I think that's beautiful. I just wish there were more of that in this world. I don't know what we're so scared of, to say, I am this person and I'm also this person. Mm-hmm. And that makes me the whole person that I am. Like, what is so hard about that?
I know. Well, and part of it goes right back to what you said at the beginning of this talk, because we do not talk about it, because those of us with mental differences, we don't talk about it. And we don't reframe our thinking into realizing that our mental differences are what make us successful. We are not successful despite these things. And when we realize that these differences make us successful, then we can hold ourselves up as mentors to all the other us's in the world. But until we reframe ourselves and think and realize we're not just getting over something or getting through something, we're accomplishing because of these differences, we don't put ourselves out there.
Yes. Tell me what a nightmare board is. I loved this.
Yes. So, oh my God. So for how many years have we talked about vision boards and everybody like manifesting what if you think it and dream it, it's going to be true. I have always believed in nightmare boards, and this is the power of a person with anxiety. Put everything you think is going to go wrong on that board, and then more. And by doing that, just by simply doing that fact, you are going to be able to avoid almost all of them. but just getting it down, because otherwise you're thinking there's just, if you don't get those nightmares down on paper, you think there's an infinite amount. But if you just start putting them down, you realize that they are finite, and there's ways to get around them. In fact, the more you can capture, the more you can be successful by avoiding them.
Right. And what you're doing, if you were in corporate America, it would be like, where I'm doing de-risking analysis, I'm doing strategic planning. It's the same thing.
Yep. And just bring it into your personal life at the same time.
Well, and it's also, I don't know if you've ever done cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a classic technique.
Yeah.
What if? Okay, well then this would happen, and then if that,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you begin to eliminate those nightmares. But if you don't have a nightmare board, and why don't we talk about having a nightmare board? Why do we hold up as a culture having vision boards? Again, that's that thing, like, I am not going to be happy like other people are going to be happy, but I might be content if I can cross off some nightmares.
And also, I think, at least this is, what a therapist would tell you is like, maybe the nightmares are survivable.
Yes. And if you're someone who only has a vision board, you don't see the nightmares coming, and you're going to have them.
I know. I just love it. I love it. I was thinking, oh my God, what would be on my nightmare board? I think that's going to be my weekend project. The other thing I want to talk about, and then I want to shift more into sort of your genius with storytelling and branding. You had a funny note in a chapter, and it was about feeling jealous or feeling envious. And, this is another, I've done episodes on this, very, very common human emotions that, again, we never talk about, especially as adults. And you said something funny, which is that a lot of the, I guess, millennials in your office started getting these Glossier, the makeup and beauty brand, these Glossier pink boxes delivered at work. And you were like, why are they all getting, and then you would read about Glossier and it was all these glowing headlines, and you got a little bit like, well, wait a minute, what about, feeling a little bit. Talk about that experience and what that taught you as a business person.
Well, I think one of the things, Brent and I, because we've been in business now for 18 years, we've had a lot of those envious moments of other brands. What's interesting is how many of them have not lasted. So, Glossier is still around, but there were so many of these companies.
It's had stumbles, though.
It had a major stumble, and it's now coming back. But yeah, so I'd be like, what are they doing right? Why are they succeeding where we're not succeeding? And to be super envious of them. And then, a few months later, they were bankrupt or gone. So for me, that realizing that don't be envious of their success, try to figure out what achieved that success, and then what part of that success can you apply to the project you're working on. Don't try to copy what they're doing. Figure out the components of what they're doing and apply them to what you're working on now.
Yeah. And use all those empathy skills that we were talking about at the beginning, and noticing skills, right? Because it can feel threatening. Like for me, if I see someone who talks about similar things, but they're, have X many million followers, like I think about someone like Mel Robbins, for example, who people are always like, you should be more like Mel Robbins. Do you read Mel? And for a long time, I couldn't bring myself to watch Mel Robbins. I was it made me feel so bad about myself.
Okay. Yes, completely. Well, and so talk to me now. I want to know, like, how did you get through that?
Well, I'm just starting. I have to admit, I'm just starting, and I'm reading her book, and again, trying to be like, God, she's so successful. What can I learn from her without all the pressure of I'm never going to be Mel Robbins? Mm-hmm. That's the rub. It's like it's getting from what's so bad about me that I can't achieve that to what can I learn? That's the reframe.
And that's actually interesting to me now, because one of the things I'm working on, and maybe some of your listeners are reaching this point, I'm nearing retirement. My friends and colleagues are nearing their retirement age. And we're seeing this, what I'm seeing, I'll see somebody on LinkedIn, post that they're retiring. And everything that comes after that is like, oh, I can't wait for your next chapter. I can't wait to see what you do next. And we, as a culture, we have this constant striving is like what we have to do next. And we never let ourselves like succeed. Like, you know what? I succeeded. I'm done. I accomplished.
I'm out.
Yes, I call it bliss appearing. How do we bliss appear in life? But
that's great.
I think that's and part of the stumbling block I'm having is, yes, there's that envy when you see somebody younger than you doing what you do, or somebody more successful than doing what you do. How can you be happy for that person? How can you feel like you're part of that success, and not be envious of that success? And I think that's a challenge, and that's something that I'm actually still working on. But I think that's something that's acutely aware as we age and as we get closer to retirement. And you're like, gosh, I am not the center of achievement anymore. Other people are. I can't do those things anymore. So how am I going to take joy in these things that were central to my life for so long if I'm not central to it anymore?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's very mature.
Well, I didn't say I have an answer. I said I'm working on it.
I know. And I think for listeners thinking, wait, this guy's achieved like everything. Like, I mean, that's so interesting that you still have those sort of striving thoughts, even after everything you've done.
And I think that's partially because our culture doesn't let us be done. Our grandparents, our parents, in some of our cases, they worked 50 years. They got a gold watch. They went to Florida and they won, and they knew they won, and they were happy. So what has changed that we don't allow ourselves to reach that moment anymore?
What does a goat do when it's done providing milk?
It doesn't think any differently about itself.
It's probably like, phew, I feel better.
That's true. I don't, twice a day, I don't have to have somebody fondling me.
I had chickens. This is a really stupid aside, but I had chickens for a while. I had hens, and they kind of went through hen menopause. And obviously, if they were on a farm, I think they would have been, but in my little hen utopia, they were kind of like postmenopausal crone hens.
Yes.
And they were so happy.
That's a great metaphor. I'm going to steal that because I remember, reading in somewhere in a farm magazine about chickens, and it said basically think about your chicken as it has a set amount of eggs inside of it from the day it started, and
it does.
And those, I mean, not literally, but at some point those eggs will stop. And I think that is a little bit of a metaphor for aging too. Like, you have a set amount of accomplishments that you are going to have in this world. And at some point you are going to have had all those accomplishments. So is that saying you have a purposeless life after that? No, but your major eggs are going to have dropped. So, how are you then going to enjoy the rest of your life and not be envious of those still laying eggs, or worry about what you're supposed to do next?
Yes. And I will say, as someone who's acutely interested in studying women who've gone through menopause and come out the other side, they're living their best lives.
Yes, absolutely.
They are free. They DGAF. And so I think there's something really inspiring there too.
Yeah. And we have to hold that up. We really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That was a little aside.
It's not the chicken or the egg. It's the chicken and no eggs.
No eggs. My crone chickens. You come from a storytelling background, obviously. Creative director, writer. When you were starting Beekman, how did you think about that? Because you said you got a little article in the New York Times. That's really hard to get.
Mm.
You had the show. You were on The Amazing Race. You won it.
Mm-hmm.
What role, and how did you guys think about your brand and the storytelling as you evolved? Because that's risky. That doesn't feel in character of the nightmare board. And so I think that's a wonderful part of it. Well,
I think the ultimate nightmare is always that you're going to have more nightmares. It's like having 3 wishes and wishing for another wish. It's like the opposite of that. It's so for me, the fear of failure was always so much greater than the fear of taking risks. As much as I hated taking risks, the fear of failure was the driver. And I really, even looking back today, I have a hard time remembering those early years of the business when we were out in front all the time, taking risks all the time. That was horrible, but the option was worse. The option was losing the farm, losing our jobs, losing our apartment in the city, losing everything. So that's what kept me going. Storytelling, I think I learned as a child, and as part of what we talked about earlier about being creative, is I realized that I can get around most any obstacle by telling stories, which sometimes is, my mother would say it was fibbing, but it was creating an engaging enough story to get people on my side.
Yes.
So me, little gay kid in Wisconsin, trying desperately to have friends, had to find ways of telling my own story that fit in with them, to get around that thing that could never be mentioned. So storytelling to me has always just been that creative way of getting around an obstacle. And when you're starting a business, that's all you're doing is getting around obstacles. That's what entrepreneurialism is. So being able to tell stories gives you an audience. And when you have an audience, you have customers.
Why did you decide to, so first of all, you're the second Amazing Race winner I've had on The Anxious Achiever. I had the Holdernesses.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Who
the family,
also, right? Yeah. So they won, and Penn wrote a book about having ADHD, and Kim has clinical anxiety. And they talked about that interplay too, and how, so maybe there's something in it.
Oh my God, the anxiety is so good on the race.
Well, tell me, why?
Oh gosh, because when you can see everything that can go wrong, and people are trying to make things go wrong for you, like that's the ultimate competitor right there.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I would bet somebody should do a study on how many winners of the Amazing Race live with anxiety.
Oh God, I would love to do that. That's awesome. That's a great idea.
Yes.
What about that decision felt like a smart business move for you?
The Amazing Race?
Yeah.
We weren't sure that we would do it because, again, on my nightmare board, the gay middle-aged team never wins. Any reality TV show. They're in there to be campy and tell a few jokes and then get out of the way for, the all-American whatever team. So the nightmare board was like, we shouldn't do this because we're just going to be there as a joke and we won't win. So knowing that going in, Brent and I said, we are not going to be the campy gays that they want us to be. We are going to be the strategic leaders that we know ourselves to be. And so that was, that was how we approached the race. Well, just the basic knowledge of having an audience of 11 million people every week is going to help a fledgling business awareness. But on the race, you can't interact with the racers until the race begins. So they don't know your names or anything until that starting gun goes off. And Brent and I always introduced ourselves as the Beekman boys, not as Josh and Brent, so that the word Beekman came up through the whole, 12 episodes, and just for that brand awareness.
That is really smart.
Yeah. I don't think most of our competitors on that season probably still don't know our names.
Gosh, that's really smart.
Thank you.
I have just one funny remaining thing, but I just wanted to ask you one last question, which is that when you fly through LaGuardia, which I'm assuming you do, in the Delta terminal, and you see that giant sign, what does that spark in you?
That does spark joy. But I have to remind myself constantly for all of our achievements to stop and say, this is special. Like, this is something you would never have dreamed you would have accomplished. So Brent has this philosophy that I've adopted as my own. It's basically like, define success as early as you can, success for you. And success for both of us was basically not having economic anxiety, acute, like we both grew up lower middle class to poor. And so our success was saying, you know what, I don't think we're going to be homeless. Like, I think we're good. We're not going to be homeless and we're going to have enough to eat. And when you define that success, and everyone's going to have a different one, and you achieve that success, remind yourself that you've achieved that success. So yes, we have a beautiful store in LaGuardia where like everywhere in every altar around the world, but not wanting 2 beautiful stores or 3 beautiful stores. If it happens, great. But really every once in a while stopping and saying, we have achieved our goal of success and we're not moving that goalpost. Your goalpost may be, you want to be Elon Musk billionaire. That's a perfectly fine goal. But I think, even he or even billionaires, when they reach it, they want more, or they are unhappy because they don't have more. So really setting that goalpost and not moving it is so important, I think, to contentment going forward.
I love that. I hear you saying define what enough is and try to stick to it.
Yeah. And enough is totally different for many, many people. For everybody, it's totally different. But really knowing what that is, I don't even writing it down. I mean, we did it in retrospect, but I think it is a great exercise to say what is going to make me comfortable in life. Writing it down and just revisiting it. Great example. So like I said, acute economic worry is something that has plagued both Brent and I for most of our lives. When all of our business credit cards at one point early on, all the points went to Hilton Honors. And I remember 2 years ago sitting down, looking at the cheapest hotel. It was, I don't know if it was Hampton Inn or something, and it was in New Mexico, somewhere in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it was the cheapest honors points that you could spend a night. And I calculated that with the honor points that we had built, we could stay there for the rest of our lives. And suddenly I was like, I'm not homeless. Check. And it was, but that, that's how people think about their worst fears. But once you can check off that worst fear, just be done with it.
Well, and you did what your advice was. You used data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So if I'm ever in the Albuquerque, New Mexico, you'll know that we're at rock bottom, but it's fine.
I think I've stayed there. I don't recommend it. The last thing is about kindness. Kindness is a theme in your company. It's on your website. It's in the book. Kindness is, again, one of those words that I think sounds a little trite.
Right.
To a lot of us, especially those of us who run a little cynical.
Yeah.
Why kindness?
Again, back to data, back to science. So I think we all, especially anybody who's empathic, well, anybody really, I think we all know that kindness generally wins the day. But the stories that we're fed of leaders, especially, are ruthless. You have to do whatever you have to do to get ahead. So somehow in our culture, we've defined winning as being ruthless and cutthroat and, everyone else be damned, self-centered.
For sure.
But we know that the people who are kind generally wind up happier, on top, successful. So Brent and I have sort of made it our mission to, again, use data. We fund kindness.org. We funded the first scientific study that scientifically validated and could measure kindness. So it's a kindness quotient, a series of questions validated by Harvard and Oxford that can measure kindness in an organization. So one of the things that we're doing is, we've had Nestle, we've had Ulta Beauty, organizations take the kindness quotient, and we are proving that those organizations that score a higher kindness quotient have more success than those who don't. We've already proven it on individual worker levels. At Beekman, people have their KPIs set for them, and the ones who score higher on the kindness quotient have performed better towards their KPIs than those who are lower on the kindness. So for us, yes, kindness is a very squishy word. It's also our main brand value, core brand value. But when you measure it, you can prove that it actually is a strategic advantage.
That's awesome. And I also want to give a plug for Dr. Bonnie Hayden Chang, who's been on the show. She's a professor at Hong Kong University, and she's written about kind leadership and has lots of amazing data about why being a kind leader, which isn't the same as being a nice leader.
Very different. Very different.
Is one of the strongest things we can be.
Absolutely. I think we know that in our hearts, but nobody's ever been able to prove it. So that our goal is to really prove it. And I look forward to reading her research.
Oh my God, kindness.org.
Yes, that's the organization we work with.
Awesome. Okay, can I ask you one more question? And it's wildly just in our remaining 2 minutes. I want you to talk about, so I've always had rural fantasies. I grew up in upstate New York as well, riding horses. And my husband and I actually bought a farm during the pandemic. And then we unbought it 5 days later because we realized, oh my God, this is very overwhelming. I know a lot of listeners out there think often, I just want to give it all up and move to the country and have goats. What advice do you have for us?
Okay. If you're trying to make a living farming, it is as impossible as you've ever heard. Like, it is the most complicated business in the world. So first of all, take rural and business and put that aside. It's not going to happen. But my mother told me something once, and that really stuck with me. She said, some people learn about the world through people, and some people learn about people through the world. And I think there are two very different types of people. You either surround yourself with people and you realize, what the human experience is through other people, or you surround yourself with nature and you realize what the human experience is with nature. So I think, think about where you draw more inspiration and more knowledge from, and chances are that's where you belong. Oh
God, that's beautiful. That's a great place to end it. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was just a joy. Thank you.
Likewise. And again, I so appreciate what you're doing.
Same.